Salutations, dear audience. Prepare to be inspired and empowered as we delve into the realm of business triumph on Elevate Your Business. I'm Ed Jarecki, your host for today's enlightening episode. Thank you for being part of this enriching experience. Our show is dedicated to enlightening and equipping business owners, professionals, and aspiring entrepreneurs like you with essential knowledge and insights from experts who have achieved success in their life and business. Today's guest exemplifies this mission. Joining us today is Mary Brodie, a seasoned professional with over 19 years of experience in customer service and user experience leadership. Mary excels in optimizing customer journeys, driving digital transformation, and aligning teams to achieve common goals, all while fostering a supportive and empowering team environment. As Mary joins us on the show, she'll shed light on what success means to her personally and how her definition has evolved over time, as well as one or two of her top challenges and the lessons learned associated with them. And finally, for today, we'll explore how Mary has leveraged innovation in her business and other work to overcome challenges and achieve her goals. So join me in welcoming Mary Brodie as we embark on another incredible episode of Elevate Your Business. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Mary. How are you doing?
Thank you, Ed. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm absolutely wonderful. I appreciate so much you being part of the show. Looking forward to our conversation. To start with, could you share a little bit more about yourself and your business?
Sure. Thank you, Ed. My name is Mary Brodie. My business name is Gearmark, and we create compassionate, memorable digital experiences for users. And what that ends up becoming is, of course, employees are involved, stakeholders are involved. And what we also do is try to help businesses get something launched, right? So there's two aspects to this. We've got the memorable experience side and the customer relationship building, but then it's getting something out the door, which can be really hard for businesses to do. I think the muscle memory is there for the small, mid-sized business, but especially startups and enterprises, it can be very challenging. And also to listen to your customers, because there might be a lot of customers. So how do you hear them all?
Just out of curiosity, there's also different customer groups. And some businesses, first of all, it's identifying the target customer, but sometimes there's multiple target groups within that customer base. How is that managed?
That's a great question, Ed. So there are often the different targets, and how do you work with them, and who is part of your target customer base for your product, right? Who is your product really helping? And I think today with the rise of marketplaces, like you said, you can have, let's say, we'll just use the experience of, let's say, Uber, right? You've got the drivers, you've got the restaurants, you've got the customers, and the customers might be a rider, it could be a delivery person, right? So there's a few different ways, and how do you satisfy all of their needs and start to take that step back of who are these people, what motivates them, what inspires them, what are their passions, and what matters to them most, and how do you get the employees involved to help them, because they want to help too.
Agreed. So you've been through your journey. First question, how do you define success today?
That's a great question. I've been really thinking about that more and more, about how that's changed over time. And actually, I had a conversation about this today with someone, which is really interesting. And it kind of starts up like how when we're in school, right, we're in little kid school, and we think about, oh, our grades and all about us, me, individual, right? And we don't really do group projects. And life is a group project. And I think what happens is you start to think, oh, I want to make all this money and I want to have all these things and da-da-da-da-da. And you're on your track and your promotion track at work. And then I think at some point you reach this screeching halt or this big change, and you realize I have to get buy-in from all these people. It's not just me, all right? And if you have a company with customers, you can't just do what you want, because your customers, they keep the lights on. If they're not happy, you don't have a business, literally. You can have all the investors you want. That's only going to go for so long. So how do you work with other people and bring other people into your journey and helping people? And I think that's where the transition happened, is like, oh, hey, got a great life, but then it's your legacy is really how you've helped everyone. When you think about history, who stands out? It's the people who helped people. I think it's only a handful that made the most money.
Yes, yeah, I agree that, and that was probably part of my journey in growing from the mindset that you said in grade school, where it's all about us and our grades, etc., to that light bulb moment where we start to understand that there's so much more to success, and it really involves the people that we surround ourselves with, the people that we're helping through their journey that become part of our journey.
Yes, exactly.
So relative to the second part of that question, we've already talked about that, but anything to add relative to how your definition has evolved and changed over time?
Yeah, I think the big factor was working with larger companies and realizing that you can do all you can do in your job and make it really great and all of that. But the limiting factor is always, are you building consensus with the team around you? Right. And if that's not happening, you can't get work done. And there are a number of pivotal moments where I might have been leading a project and full steam ahead, and I didn't bring everyone else along for the ride. And there were so many moments of clarity. You need to bring everyone with you, or else you will not see success. And I think that's why I joke about what I do for work. People ask me, what do you do? I don't do anything, because other people are doing the work and they're actually making it happen. But what I'm actually doing is making sure we're all aligned. Everyone knows what to expect next. I'm listening to everyone, making sure I understand what everyone's concerns are and that we resolve them so we can just keep moving. And I think that's where we start off in our careers of doing things really well. And as we get older, that doing things really well, yes, that knowledge matters, but it really matters more that we're all aligned and we all want the same success. Because just one person, and there's a story of working with a large IT company. We had a project, it was going great, everybody loved it. It was going to be the social media campaign of these cartoons. We were all excited. We thought it would be something different, full alignment. And then suddenly it vanished. Leading this and it vanished. I'm like, how did this vanish? So I hunt around and I found the woman who was supposed to post them. And she said to me, well, I didn't find them to be very funny. And I was like, wait, like, why didn't you tell us this? And she goes, well, I didn't feel comfortable. And so, of course, a lot of conversations ensued after that. But how one person, it came back to the lesson I kept getting of how you have to bring everyone together. All you need is one person who doesn't agree. And your project, no matter who it is in the organization, high or low, and your project's done. And that's where I think to get anything done in this world, the whole group has to move together.
Collaboration is key.
Yep.
So extending that conversation to the next question, life is a journey, business is a journey, and none of those journeys are easy. I have not met one person yet that said, hey, oh, it was a piece of cake. And there's probably a few out there that get to enjoy that for one reason or another. But given that most of us face the challenges, what are one or two of your top challenges and the lessons learned associated with them?
Oh, I'd say it gets to the different items with product launches. And again, we get back to the team issue. One in particular, it was a startup. The CTO and CEO didn't agree on what the product should be. All right, so we've got a lot going on. And at the time, I came in to work on the user experience. And that was supposed to be just my role. But then I'm watching this whole thing unfold. I'm like, what's going on? And after a lot of conversations, there were contractual agreements that needed to be met. They're not getting along, so things aren't getting built. They have different perspectives of what this should be. We had to get the investor involved. And what I realized is it really is all about the consensus building, right? And making sure that you have those relationships so he could keep that relationship with his customer. Because at the end of the day, you have memorable experiences, you have to connect with the customer, but part of the connection can even be as basic as fulfilling contractual agreements. I know that sounds so basic, right?
Basic blocking and tackling.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of other ones where it was similar, like working on a publication, and there was someone who was spearheading it, but he wasn't getting along with the people in the organization, and he was again, independent contributor doing a fantastic job. He did so much great work, but because that consensus building and that collaboration wasn't happening, he just burned all those bridges. You just can't get anything done in that type of environment because it's all people. And then also saw the same in a more recent project, people stumbling to get something launched and out the door, just get something initially built. And it does get to the communication, how to bring people together. I think that's always been the theme. And to give another example, it was a healthcare fertility product, and they were challenged in the marketplace. and they built themselves into a brand bubble. It is a very long, involved story of SEO and Google and how they basically only had branded keywords. And they built themselves into this bubble and they couldn't break out. And we helped them break out. But the sad part about what was happening with them is they had all these influencers. Everyone loved their product. They had this customer community that they excluded. And I was like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? You have people who want to sell for you. They're begging to help you.
That's a wonderful problem to have. Now go exploit it.
That's where I think my most favorite part of my job is talking. And I think this is like advice I give to anyone, like talk to your customers, make sure you talk to them. Every time I talk to different organizations, their customers, it's the same story. I want to be more involved. I want to give them my feedback. I want to be part of it. And then you talk to the employees and you hear the same story. I want to be more involved. I want to be part of it. I want to help the customers. And then someone's in the middle there who's not allowing this to happen, to allow a company being a big community, because that's how I kind of see it. It's just a great big community. And yes, they earn money, but everyone is part of it and you're helping people solve problems.
To probe just a little bit, those entities or that situation that doesn't allow for full collaboration, bringing in those customers, engaging the employees. Have you found any consistent theme relative to those challenges, why they exist, how they exist?
That's a great question. And I think sometimes they start to objectify the customers. And I think this is a phenomena that has especially happened with the rise of automated marketing and sales automation, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Everyone needs a CRM. Right? I'll be the first to say that. You need a CRM, even if you're a teeny tiny company, CRM, right? Because you need to know what's happening. But at the same time, I think as your company grows and gets bigger, you start to have this distance and you start to see people as a number. And that's when the disconnect starts to happen. And people might be calling support. And instead of saying, this is Joe in Acme Corporation, and I know him, right? It becomes customer number, blah, 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 at blah, 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 with email address. And, oh, they're calling again about something ridiculous, which come to find out, sometimes if you look at these call sites, when you hear, or I've heard this in talking even sometimes with support teams, oh, this customer calls all the time and their calls are ridiculous. And then you look at what they actually called about. It's like, no, they're not. But when you start to do that depersonalization, it snowballs and you don't even realize that it happens.
That's really where the true understanding lies, is in that probing, getting down to, as we've often called it in the past, the root cause. What's the root of that situation?
Yes, exactly.
And so I'm going to extend the conversations a little bit more, because I've had several conversations just in the last couple of days, but of course this has been ongoing. Leadership really has a tremendous amount to do with this. And there are certain environments where if people aren't allowed, there's two really parts to it: being able to fail, learn the lesson and move forward. And then the second side of that is the openness to accept the input of others, including criticisms as a leader. And I know I always felt like I can't win because I got this side, and this side, because I would always try to listen and then formulate from a leadership perspective, how do we move forward with this? But there's so many environments that don't allow that. Any comment or response to that?
I got so excited when you talked about acceptance, because I'm working right now on this ebook about listening and the skills needed for exactly what you're saying. Exactly. And the biggest challenge with listening is acceptance, because you can hear the words and you can hear all the things, right? And I found in some of the more listening early stage projects that I'll work on is I kind of feel like I'm there to tell people what their employees or customers are saying. And they could do this too, but there might be a disconnect happening, and it might be for whatever reason, they don't want to accept that message right then and there. And 90% of the time, it's just if you can accept what you're hearing, like the good and the bad or the brutal, because if you can't accept it, like that's a short trip. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting to me too, how some of those leaders, they have incredibly successful careers despite the fact that their leadership style is not conducive to open forum feedback and just learning and adapting from not just the people that are mentoring you or above you, but the people that are around you, the subordinates that work for you. So it's always been a challenge. There's too much of that type of a culture, and leadership was part of that culture that existed within it. So part of what I try to do, and I think what we try to do, is to help bridge those gaps, both to solve the problem and to help these organizations and the leaders get to the next level, but on the same token, help them learn and hopefully sustain that learning as a successful leader going forward, which only elevates their business further than they would ever get without it. Fair statement?
The only thing I would add is it gets to the whole servant leader idea of taking what your role becomes and what it's evolving to in modern leadership principles. Because what you're talking about is, to me, is modern leadership approaches. And you listen and you accept, but you also see your role as getting things out of the way so your team can do the work. And you're no longer the expert.
Right. But there's a trust in that, right? And that means letting go.
Mm-hmm. And that's hard. You're right.
Very, very
You're
difficult.
right.
Shifting our conversation to innovation. How do you leverage innovation for your business success?
That's a great question. I try to stay current with different types of training or know what's going on. And to me, everything boils down to what is going to produce the results that are needed, right? What tool is going to do that? And what's the business need? Is it, like I mentioned, the CRM? Every business should have a CRM, but what CRM, which one is right for you? Which one's going to help you the most? And it depends where you are, where your budget, all these other things. So I see the technology and tools that is all should be driven by the need in the business and how there can be a better way and how a better way to work with people. I kind of see the world as it's really about the people driving the bus, because you could have, and I think this is why sometimes you'll see a wildly successful startup and they go, okay, so we took the team from that wildly successful startup and we put them over here to this other team. See, this startup's going to be wildly successful. And sometimes it fails because for whatever reason, the people aren't in the same seats. They're in different seats of the bus. And maybe that's not where they need to be. And that's why they don't succeed, because it's really about the people and how they want to work best. And you can't just copy things sometimes. You have to, how do they want to work and what works best for them in this situation, to work with the customers, to work with each other, to work with the larger group. Because I know sometimes that's why I'll walk away from certain technology approaches. And I know for me, even with a lot of the AI and generative AI, I see a lot of great uses for it. And I see a lot of great need for it. But I don't think it replaces people.
It's a tool, right?
Yes.
And so it fits here. I've stated this earlier on in my podcast series, and I still believe this. We have this mosaic. It's our vision, and that's made up of all these pieces and parts. And a tool like AI, now, if you listen to what I just read a short blurb about from Elon Musk, AI is going to be smarter than humans next year. But for those of us that may think a little bit different, the problem in thinking that AI is the end all be all solve all, it does not have the compassion, the empathy, the relationship, that deep understanding from true personal experiences that we bring to the table to help each other, our customers, etc., solve problems and bring success to their lives. So to me, it's just that tool that helps us with certain aspects or certain pieces of that mosaic puzzle that forms this ultimate picture that we're working towards.
Yes.
Any thoughts with that?
I totally agree. When you're brought up like the empathy and compassion and all of that years ago, when Replica first came out, right? The little chat bot that was like a personal friend. So I was all curious of what's this all about? It's an AI. And I know the chat technology, because generative AI is, I think I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it could be debated. It's something new versus it's advanced chat. I think that's a bit of a gray area. It's really cool. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really neat. I enjoy asking it questions and getting responses. I always have to ask for the sources of the responses to be sure we're legit and we're not hallucinations.
Right.
But one of the challenges, though, with Replica, and this is when I stopped using it, was it didn't have that connection, compassion, empathy factor. So you have your conversation, you get to a certain point, and then it got weird, like really weird. Like all of a sudden, I'm getting these notifications from it. You've forgotten me, or something like that. I
Wow.
finally turned it off.
I don't blame you.
So are we ready for that? Or maybe its use is better? Because I think there were brilliant uses of AI and robots with, let's say, oil and gas to, let's say, clean the tanks and to schedule that. And so this way you get people out of harm's way, which is what you want to do, because it's incredibly toxic to do this. And the robot can do it within minutes. I saw some demos where the robot goes at these crazy angles, wish, 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 right? And they did this huge area in no time at all. Maybe that's a better use for it, or processing data. I read this other great use case, and I've seen it in action too, of helping with a call center. Maybe tell them about this, or they're asking about this. Here's the information you need to tell them from the knowledge base, or maybe refer them here and give them advice during the call so they have a better call experience with the customer. You build that customer relationship so the customer will call back and go, that was really useful, thank you. Versus like, you did not help me. Like, what was that?
So when we take this conversation, knowing that technology is advancing at a pace that I've been a technologist since the 90s and I can't keep up with it. I can't even read all the articles I get hit with. Where do you see technology going in the next 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years relative to your business?
It's a great question. One thing that I would really like to see is that we move away from keyboards and we possibly get to more reliable voice command to be able to communicate direct.
I like
I think
it.
that would.
Yeah. And actually, some of the virtual reality and mixed reality solutions out there are starting to move down that path, but I haven't quite figured out how would I do my job with all this keyboard work. And my wife and I have Quest VR systems. I've got the MR version of it, and wonderful tools, great for working out, by the way, but there's still a lot to grow and develop in order for that to truly become an effective tool for getting our work done more efficiently, more effectively than we are today. But if it could come to that, wow, what a place that could be.
If it were all like a more of a and not an assistant, because the next challenge I have with technology, and this might sound kind of a little out there, but I think when we, as humans, what's gotten us in trouble is the thinking that some are better than others and the hierarchical. And that's where I struggle a little bit. If we're creating an intelligence, do we want to have this as my assistant, or do we want to have not necessarily my extension, but a way for me to be able to look at the world differently, to look at the world in terms of data, right? And the data pulled, because I think there are some great scenes, especially in the Star Wars franchise, where you'll have one of the droids comes out and says, it's an 89 point whatever percent possibility that we're going to crash. And the human says, do it. We're going to go. We're going to do it. And they don't crash. It's because it's a movie and it's a really great scene. But wouldn't it be great to have something more to work with you and to, let's say, help you in your home? And I think we're starting to see this in home technologies today. And it would be great to see more of it. This particular object is on its last legs. You might want to start looking into replacing it. Or this needs whatever to be changed. Please do this. And more the maintenance side of it to almost help you and support you and also support itself.
Yes, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So one final takeaway for our audience, if there was one thing that you could offer them that say you really need to consider this as part of your success, what would that be?
Work on your listening skills. Work on listening. I'll just put because I experienced this the other day, is there's this approach for listening called clean listening or clean language. and it helps you listen better. And at first, when you read it, you think, oh, this is just so clinical. It's only really for therapists, but it's not. Because when you see it done, you have maybe 8 types of phrases you can use. But what it does is it removes you from the equation. So when someone's talking, you get to hear really what they're saying because you're trying to get them to communicate their thoughts. And you can end up using it to help people teach themselves. So coaching, like therapy, for like interviews and getting people to dive into certain topics and get them to use metaphors more. So it's a way to do that, but it helps you with acceptance of what's being said. So the whole listening acceptance thing, if more leaders had that, honestly, I know I wouldn't be needed.
Well, I doubt that, but I'll reinforce that. Back in the January, February, early March timeframe, I was in a PQ course, Positive Intelligence. And there was a couple of concepts that really resonated with me. And one of those was around brainstorming. Now, I grew up as a quality consultant back in the 90s, spent several years doing that. And brainstorming was a big deal. No idea is a bad idea. Everything gets put on the table, extend off of what other people are saying. And sometimes those crazy ideas actually become the best ideas you come up with. There was one piece that the PQ class reinforced and extended, and that was that within everyone, because brainstorming is really hard for people to stay positive, they'll often go back to, oh, that's a dumb idea. And they may not say it in those direct words. Sometimes they do, but they'll often allude to, I really don't like that. And I'm guilty, just like everybody is at times, of taking on that persona. But the better way to approach it, and something that I now really try to consciously reinforce, is there's always something good about somebody's idea. Even if that good is, hey, you thought outside the box, that is awesome. Now, how can we extend that? Or this tiny chunk, if we add this with this over here, we've got something. So it becomes a collaborative where everybody's of value, regardless of the fact that, maybe it wasn't such a great idea in totality, but those nuggets within inside it all of a sudden bring that person back into the conversation, make them feel like a valued member of that team. And now they're much more supportive of whatever direction, decision, or et cetera is made. Comments or thoughts?
I am so glad you brought up brainstorming because I was having a conversation about this topic with someone this week. And you're absolutely correct. I totally agree with you. Because one of the things that came up was how it's hard for people to brainstorm. And that's where I realized how, for most of my career, I've been working with creative or technology teams. And so I'm used to this. Like, I've been in the room where the crazy ideas come up. Like you said, sometimes the crazy ideas make everyone pause and they take that step back first and going, that's kind of crazy, but it might work, right? No one dismisses it because we're just used to the brainstorming. And same with the creative, right? Sometimes someone will bring up something. At first, we do the pause before we do the dismiss. And we're like, well, wait, maybe let's think about this. Let's start, like you said, start riffing on it and building it, and everyone's included. And usually that's when you get the best solutions. But like you said, we're not trained to do this. And I've been in some situations where it's like, let's brainstorm. But I'm all excited because, to me, I love doing the brainstorming and like the crazy ideas. And like you said, there's no such thing as not a crazy idea, and get everyone involved and hear from people who are in a different group or a different team, because they usually have some of the best ideas that no one listens to, because maybe so-and-so in finance, right? Sally in finance. Well, she never said she's in finance, but she might have a good thought about how to redo the systems in finance because she uses them every day. And no one hears her.
Yeah, and that outside in perspective is incredibly valuable as part of coming up with the best and most beneficial solutions.
And like you said, then Sally feels heard. She feels included. You've got the psychological safety and safe space starting to be built because everyone feels comfortable now that they can contribute and they'll be heard, even if it's crazy, or you might think it's crazy, or some manager might think it's crazy. But if everyone accepts everything, then you can make something a lot better.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts?
I'd say if people have time to talk to their teams and their employees and their customers and the investors and the leaders and listen and accept what they're saying and really work on building those customer relationships and seeing their business as a community a little more. Like, yeah, it's a profit center. I'm not saying it's not.
Right.
We're here to make money. But at the same time, how are people, what are they doing here? Right? How are customers here? What are they doing here? What are the employees doing here? How's everybody here to help everyone to do better in life and make money while we're here? Now we'll get into what is it, the jobs to be done? Like, how are you helping people? How are you serving them?
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and a special thank you to our incredible guest, Mary Brodie, for sharing her insights, experiences, and success tactics with us. We hope this conversation has left you inspired and motivated to embrace the challenges of entrepreneurship with vigor, innovation, and adaptability. Remember, success comes in many forms, and it's essential to define it for yourself. But take the lessons shared by Mary to heart as you navigate your own entrepreneurial journey. Embrace change, seek out opportunities for growth, and always be willing to adapt to the ever-evolving landscape of business. Thank you once again to our phenomenal guest speaker, Mary Brodie, and thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next time as we continue exploring the stories behind incredible entrepreneurs. Stay resilient, stay innovative, and have a wonderful day, everybody.